I have a riddle for you. It goes like this. Trauma doesn't destroy her. Narcissistic abuse doesn't erase her. Depression doesn't kill her. Chronic illness doesn't silence her forever. And grief doesn't disconnect you from her. Who is she? Now, I will be answering that a little bit later in the episode, but I want to know, have you ever had one of those moments where something inside of you told you not to do something, but you ignored it? Maybe you were about to send a text message, or maybe you started dating someone even though something felt a little bit off. Or maybe you took a job and moved across the country, or made a big decision that looked really perfect on paper, but deep down, you just kind of knew. And then later you found yourself saying, "Oh, I knew it." I have definitely had those moments more times than I would like to admit. One time I was working as a makeup artist on a film set, and I set a bottle of makeup remover down next to an actor's laptop. And I immediately thought, don't put that there. It's going to spill. And then I thought, no, it's going to be fine. Now that I have that in my awareness, I'll just be really careful. But guess what happened? It spilled all over their laptop. And I was really embarrassed. Now, you might call that intuition. Somebody else might call it a gut feeling. And somebody else might say that it was God trying to get my attention. Or maybe you would say it's just that my subconscious noticed a risk before my conscious mind did. And whatever you call it, I think we've all experienced it. And today, I want to talk about what that voice is and where it comes from. And I think you're going to gain some really valuable insights from today's episode. And I'm also going to be introducing you to a concept that I've been developing for quite some time, but wasn't ready to release into the world until now. So if you haven't subscribed yet, definitely subscribe to this podcast so you can get notifications when they come out, and settle in and get ready. Here we go. Welcome to Jotindi, Journey to the Inner Divine, a sacred space for healing energy, emotional release, and soulful transformation. If you're ready to live with joy, ease, and purpose, you're in the right place. Welcome back. Now, I don't know about you, but I have definitely had those little moments happen my whole life. The ones where you have a thought or a feeling and you choose to ignore it and then immediately regret not listening to it. And sometimes it's just something really small, like the makeup remover story I just told. Other times it's a lot bigger. And believe me, I've made those mistakes too. Maybe you met somebody and everything looked really great on paper, but something just felt a little bit off. Or maybe you had the opportunity to take a new job and you couldn't explain why, but you just couldn't get excited about it. Or maybe you were driving somewhere and for no obvious reason, you just decided, I'm going to take a different route today. We all have these moments. And I think what's really interesting isn't just that they happen, but it's what we do after they happen. Because if you're anything like me, you probably spent years talking yourself out of that little voice, right? You're overthinking. Don't be ridiculous. Oh, it's just anxiety. You're being too emotional. So instead of listening to yourself, you start listening to everybody else. You ask your friends what they think. You Google it or watch YouTube videos, or you ask your therapist, right? You make pros and cons lists. And before long, you've gathered so many opinions that you can't even remember what you thought in the first place. Now, don't get me wrong. I think it can be very healthy to ask for advice. I mean, I still ask for advice all the time. The problem isn't asking for guidance. The problem comes when we stop checking in with ourselves altogether. Because somewhere along the way, so many of us learn to trust everybody else's voice more than our own. And it might be because somebody made us feel like we were too sensitive, or we were overreacting, or we just grew up in an environment where keeping the peace was safer than speaking up. And other people's expectations of us come into play. And little by little, all this noise gets turned up really loud, and our own inner voice gets harder and harder to hear. Now, I don't believe that that voice ever disappears. I don't think that you lose it. I think it's still there and it's been there your whole life. You just haven't been taught how to hear it over all the noise. And so that is what I want to explore with you today. What is that voice? Where does that voice come from? Why do some people call it intuition while other people call it divine guidance or something completely different? And more important than that, how do we start hearing it again? So let's think about that for a moment. Where does that voice come from? Like, seriously, have you ever stopped to think about it? If I asked 10 different people, I'd probably get 10 different answers. Some people would say it's intuition. Some people would say it's your gut instinct. Others would tell you it's your subconscious picking up on things that your conscious mind hasn't noticed yet. Some people will believe that it's God speaking to them, and other people might call it spirit guides or angels or their higher self. And then there are people that will say it's just logic. My brain is putting together pieces of information from past experiences, and it's helping me make a good decision. And honestly, I don't think that the explanation is actually the most interesting part. I think what's interesting is that people from all kinds of different backgrounds have all experienced the same thing. That moment where you just know. And maybe you can't even explain it. Maybe it doesn't make any sense to you yet. And maybe everyone around you thinks you're crazy, but something inside you is saying no, or it's saying yes, or maybe it's saying not yet. Or maybe it's not speaking in words at all. Maybe it's just a sense, a feeling, or a sense of peace, or a knot in your stomach, or some heaviness that you just can't explain. And whatever it is, most of us have experienced it. We just have different names for it. And I'm not here to convince you that my explanation is the right one. In fact, I think that you are allowed to hold whatever belief feels true for you. But I do think there is value in paying attention to the experience itself. Because whether you believe that that voice comes from God or your intuition or your subconscious or your life experience, ignoring it has probably gotten you into trouble at least once. And listening to it has probably saved you a few times too. So rather than arguing about what to call it, I'd rather talk about how we can build a stronger relationship with it, because that's where the things start to get really good. Now, the funny thing is, once you start paying attention to this, you're going to realize that these little moments happen all the time. Like, have you ever been driving somewhere and then all of a sudden you think, I'm going to go this other route instead for like no real reason? You just did it. Or maybe you met somebody for the very first time and within about 30 seconds you thought, I don't know what it is about this person, but I really like them. That's what happened with my friend Lindsay. First time I met her, we just instantly connected and we have been basically best friends ever since. And these feelings, like you can't really explain them, right? You don't really have any proof, but you just have a sense of knowing. Or maybe you've been dating somebody and everybody around you is saying they're amazing, they're perfect for you, and you're thinking, I know, I just can't shake this feeling that something's just not perfect for me. Or maybe you've had opposite experience. Maybe everyone is telling you like don't take that job, don't move, don't start the business, but you have this feeling inside you saying like no, this is right for me. I know this is right for me. And my favorite thing that happens is when you start thinking about somebody that maybe you haven't talked to in a really long time and suddenly they call you. That one's my favorite. And maybe that's happened to you once or twice or 100 times. But the point isn't whether it's a perfect explanation for any of these things. The point is that most of us have had these experiences and they make us kind of stop and think, like, I don't know why I knew that, but somehow I did. And they're different stories, but it's the same experience. And I just find that so fascinating. So, okay, now that we're all on the same page about what it is that we're talking about, and I've given you a lot of clear examples of exactly the type of experience I'm thinking of, I want to share with you what I like to call her. And you can still have your own beliefs about what this voice is, but this is going to be some common language that I'm going to be using throughout my podcasts in the future. So that way you all know what I'm talking about. And I call this voice your inner oracle. Now, before you roll your eyes and think, oh, great, she's completely gone off the deep end, just hear me out, okay? The reason I don't just call it intuition is because I think it is actually bigger than that. To me, your inner oracle is the deepest part of you. It's the part of you that lives underneath the fear, underneath all of the conditioning and trauma, underneath everybody's expectations of you. She's a part of you that has like always had your back. She's always been there for you. And she's never left. But we often quit hearing her voice because life just gets loud, And depending on your beliefs, that voice can come from different places. Like I said, okay, maybe you believe this is God speaking to you, or your subconscious putting together all this information that your conscious mind hasn't caught up to yet, or your intuition, or your spirit guides, or your higher self. Okay, this is all getting put under the inner oracle title for me. And personally, I honestly don't think we have to settle the debate about what this voice actually is, because regardless of what you believe, it's the experience that we're talking about. The experience is still the same. There's this part of you that knows things before you can always explain them. And there's a part of you that's constantly taking in information, right? And analyzing it. All of your past experiences, all of your emotions, the subtle things that you notice without realizing it, that your brain's processing and kind of in the background, right? The values that you've developed over your whole lifetime. And however you understand it, all of it comes together somewhere and somehow it gets translated into this simple nudge, a yes, a no, a not yet, or something feels right or something feels off. And that's the part of you that I'm calling your inner oracle. And it's not that I believe everyone should agree with the name, but because I believe that every one of us has this deeper place of connectedness inside of ourselves. And more importantly, I believe that we can rebuild our relationship with it because our goal, isn't to become somebody new, but our goal is to be able to hear your own true self again. So if that voice has been with us all along, why is it so hard to hear sometimes? And I think it starts a lot earlier than most of us realize. I mean, think about when you're a little kid. Kids are really good at listening to themselves. If they're scared, they cry. They're excited, they jump up and down. If they don't like someone, they will tell you. Kids say the darndest things after all. They don't spend a lot of time questioning whether they're allowed to feel the way they feel. They just feel it and they tell you, they express it, they act on it. It's natural for them. But as we grow up, we get these messages that start coming in. Messages like you're overreacting or you're being too sensitive or that's ridiculous. And little by little, we start learning that our own internal experience can't always be trusted. Then maybe you end up in a relationship where something just feels off, but you're told things like, you're imagining things, you're crazy, or you're making a big deal out of nothing. So eventually, you stop asking yourself how you feel, and maybe you start asking everybody else. Sometimes we even actively ignore our own inner voice or try to talk ourselves out of it because we've been told so many times that we just can't trust ourselves. Or maybe you grew up in a family where being logical was celebrated, but emotions weren't welcome. And maybe you heard things like, don't be so dramatic, or stop crying, or you're fine. So every time you had a feeling about something, you immediately tried to explain it away. Or you made a pros and cons list. You analyzed it from every angle and you talked yourself out of it. Now, don't get me wrong. I do believe that logic is incredibly important. And I'm not saying that we should stop thinking things through. What I'm saying is that a lot of us learn to use logic to silence ourselves instead of using it alongside ourselves. Then, you get older and life gets busy. busy with work, with kids and bills and responsibilities. And there's just so many things that create all this noise that drown out your inner oracle. Things like fear and trauma, conditioning, religion, culture, parents, teachers, abusive relationships, the news, social media. I mean, the list just goes on and on. You have everybody telling you who you should be and what success looks like and what your body should look like and how fast you should heal and what your life should want. And it's just so much noise. And after a while, it's not that your inner oracle stopped speaking. It's just that there were so many other voices competing for your attention that hers gets harder and harder to hear. But I do have good news for you. She never left. Your inner oracle is someone who will never abandon you. She doesn't disappear because you make mistakes. And she doesn't leave because you ignore her. And she doesn't stop speaking because somebody convinced you not to trust yourself. She waits patiently and she continues to whisper. Every little nudge, every gut feeling, every quiet moment where something inside you whispers, this isn't right, or this is exactly where you're supposed to be. She's there, and she's never upset with you. She just waits for us to get quiet enough to hear her again. And in case you're wondering, the answer to our riddle from the beginning of the episode is the inner oracle. So if she's still there and she never actually left, then the question becomes, how do we start to hear her again? Because if you've been disconnected from yourself for years or maybe even decades, it's probably not as simple as deciding that you're going to trust yourself from now on, right? If it were that easy, we'd all be doing it. But the truth is that rebuilding trust in yourself can be a lot like rebuilding trust in any relationship. It's going to take some time and consistency and learning and patience. And that's actually one of the biggest reasons that I created the healing arc. Because for a while, I thought I was just teaching people emotional healing. And of course, I am. And I thought I was teaching people nervous system regulation and energy work and mindset and boundaries and meditation and all of those things. And I am. But as I've continued to deepen this work, I've realized all of those things are really helping us to do one thing. They're helping us to rebuild our relationship with our inner oracle. And this is why I spent the last episode talking about the healing arc, because the healing arc isn't just about healing emotions. It's about clearing away everything that keeps drowning out your inner oracle. And that's why I mapped it out so carefully and why I created this process that's going to lead you from a place of confusion and noise to a place where you can repair your relationship with yourself, where you can turn up the volume on your inner oracle again and invite her back into the conversation. Now, before you leave here thinking that I'm telling you to blindly trust every impulse you have, I'm not, okay? I'm not. There are lots of voices inside of us. Fear has a voice. Shame, trauma, conditioning, they all have voices that pop up inside of us. And learning to differentiate between the voices, that is the real work here. And that is something that I spend a lot of time on with my clients, helping them to become discerning, to recognize which voice is showing up in these tense moments. It's something that I'll talk about again in future episodes too. But I think maybe I have bombarded you with enough information for today. But as we wrap up, I do want to leave you with one last question. And I want you to really sit with it. And if you have time this week, I really want you to get out a journal and think way back and start exploring. If your inner oracle had never stopped speaking to you, what is it in your life that has been speaking louder? Is it fear? Is it people pleasing or perfectionism or your parents or trauma? Right? I want you to get really honest with yourself and you might uncover something that you never expected. When I started asking myself these questions, I was really surprised at what came up, but it led me to the heart of what needed healing in my life. And I think it can do the same thing for you. And if you do this exercise and you're left with some feelings that you need to work through, I want you to use the link in the show notes and schedule a free 30-minute heart to heart with me. I am here to listen, to reflect back the things that I see, and to offer you guidance on what your next step should be. I really look forward to hearing what comes up for you. So if you don't have time for a 30-minute chat, you can always leave a comment on Spotify or let me know the answer in the review section on Apple. I really want to know what came up. And I do know that this can be an emotional topic and it can bring up some big feelings. And I want to leave you all with some encouragement today. I just want you to know that no matter how down you feel, just remember we all have our own things to work through. And just because you can't see it on somebody else on the outside doesn't mean that they're not in pain on the inside. So show yourself some compassion and know you are in good company here. I am sending you so much love this week, and I am so excited for our upcoming episodes. And if you like this one, please subscribe and share this episode with a friend. And don't forget, there is no path to happiness because happiness is the path.